Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Township of North Frontenac's regular council meeting for Friday, March the 14th, 2025. Please be advised, North Frontenac council meetings are recorded. By attending a public meeting of council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Members of council, staff, delegates, and attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior or comments. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as the gathering place of the first peoples and their ancestors who were entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the Township of North Frontenac is committed to working with indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. First item, approval of the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Udall, seconded by Councillor Hermer. Be it resolved, the council approves the agenda dated March 14th, 2025 as circulated.
Are there any comments? All in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. We have no business profiles. Presentation. Joe Gallivan, Director of Planning and Economic Development for the County of Frontenac, is with us. Talk about the 25-26 work plan. Welcome, Joe. Floor is yours.
Is that working? Thank you. Does this move the slides? I'm sorry, I'm not very good with technology. Okay. Good. Yeah, I'm over 40, I'm over 50, I'm over 60. So yeah, well, the difference between planners and engineers is planners, when we don't know, we'll tell you we don't know, we'll work on it. Engineers are never wrong, and engineers know that they're never wrong. On that note,
that is so true. And don't you forget it.
I know you have some engineers on your council. Mayor, good luck with that. So I'm sorry. No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Our intention is to do a presentation to your council every year to give you an idea of the work that we've done with your staff and in the township in the past year. The work we've done across the county, the other two townships we cover, Frontenac Islands and Central Frontenac, as well as the work we've done at the county. So I've got a few things to talk about now. You can either interrupt me while I'm speaking, or you can wait till the end, whatever council prefers. So I'm going to talk to you, just remind you again what this contract, this planning services agreement we have that was signed in 2018, a review of our workload from all of last year, and then our expected work plan and priorities for the remainder of this year and in 2026. So in terms of the agreement, it was signed in 2018. It was signed by all four townships, including South Frontenac. They don't hardly ever use our planning services except under exceptional circumstances. For example, 6 or 7 years ago, their planning director retired. They had no backup. I went in with another planner and we billed them for 4 months of planning work. So we do once in a while do direct planning with them, but they have their own planning department. We have a time tracking system that we track all of our hours. And when I say we, that's myself, Ms. Bolton, the manager, and our two planners. We do not charge for any of the GIS. That's a different arrangement, nor do we charge any hours that we have when we have summer students, which we've had every year. And we have just hired one this year. Whatever work they're doing across Frontenac, that is not billed to the townships. And I'll show you the next slide. We do our billing based on a 3-year average of the hours we spend in your municipality. And the main reason we do that is to take the bumps out of the system. You may have a major file or a major policy project in a given year. And if we only billed for 1 year, that would spike your costs. So if we roll it over 3 years, it's more of a gentle change, so to speak. So here are these are the numbers that we use this year to calculate our billing. So these hours will be used to pay our 2025 costs. If you take a look at North, which is on the left-hand side, your hours were down to just under 600, down 8% from the year before. All the hours were down last year, and I'll talk to you about that. So your 3-year share is what's based on the billing. Now at the bottom, you see last year, your 3-year share was over 16% of the total cost of our operating. Now it's down to just under 15%. And I expect this year, with 2022 out of the picture for next year, your numbers are going to go down even more as those pandemic hours start to leave this 3-year rolling average. So this is just a chart of all the hours for the 3 townships that we've spent. I think it's self-evident. You can see what the pandemic did to our work. People were coming out of the woodwork with planning applications, ideas of what they wanted to do with their property or economic development proposals that had a land-based factor. So things really changed starting in 2020, and they're now starting to come back. Last year, just under 1,750 hours, which is the lowest since 2019 pre-COVID. I don't expect that peak to come back anytime soon. So yeah, 20% decline in total township hours between 2023 and 2024. It's down 780 hours in total since the peak in 2022. Your hours dropped 276 from that peak of 2022. And you're down 8% from last year. You see Central went down by a third, real drop in activity in Central. And many of the hours that we do the work for you is based on development planning applications rather than policy planning, unless we're working on your official plan, or like we'll do this year, working on amending your plan to for you and your community to decide where you want development on communal services. Specific to North Frontenac, again, you can see that the peak is very similar to the entire townships. You're down to 580 hours. The lowest since 2019, which was 441. You peaked in 2021 at 776. Oh, excuse me, no, 2022 at 858. So in a 1-year decline of 8%, the lowest number of hours since 2019. A slight increase in planning applications from up to, and then this is important. This year, you passed a delegated authority bylaw for consent applications. What that means, if you remember, is that for those that are relatively straightforward, somebody's putting a small lot addition on, for example, does it have any public interest? Generally, no. So instead of having to go through the committee of adjustment with a full planning report, staff attendance, etc., a longer period, we were able to use that bylaw to delegate almost half of the consent applications. That saved a lot of time for us in terms of hours, for your staff as well, and also for applicants. The time period is much faster than going through the committee of adjustment. That's significant, and I think that's going to have a difference moving forward. So generally, just over 40% of our hours were general day-to-day planning for you. Pre-application, that was meeting inquiries, that was 10%. It's 57 hours. That's lower than the previous year, which was close to 100. And then we have 2 big planning files that combined took almost a quarter of our time. The application on Palmerston Lake, that took 65 hours. To give you some context, we have spent over 200 hours on that file since it was originally filed. There's a lot of public interest. It's complex. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of outside agencies involved. But yeah, 211 hours. In comparison, when we updated your official plan from scratch in 2018, it was 270 hours. So my point is, sometimes you just never know how long it's going to take to work on these files. And then the Mississauga Lake site plan agreement for Frontenac Shores. That was 56 hours. In total, we spent over 110 hours in that file, but it is closed now. That's gone. So, and Palmerston Lake should be resolved one way or the other this year, probably by the middle of this year. So. This is a chart that shows all the planning applications across the 3 townships in the last 8 years. Again, you see the spike through COVID, especially for Central Frontenac. As I've already said, not every planning application is the same. Some don't take a lot of time, some can take very long time. So the total number of applications have declined for the 4th year in a row. We're down to under 100 from the peak of 174 in 2021. You had a slight increase of 2 between 2023 and 2024. The other 2 townships had a decline. And that's just a chart that shows you all the planning applications that we dealt with in 2024, almost 100 in total, 40 for your municipality. But again, take a look at that delegated authority. Number 18 out of 23 consent applications went through delegated authority. And that's a real good news story. In terms of the county, 60% of our hours last year were spent on county work. That's good news. One of our performance indicators is our goal is to try to do at least half our work on the regional planning issues like communal services, the community planning permit system, which is affecting all 4 townships, a county official plan update. When we're able to have time doing that, it's helping the entire region. So 60% of our hours were spent on county work last year. It is a slight decline from 2023. And that is, I believe, in part because our senior planner, Mr. Kurliovich, was on paternity leave for a quarter of the year last year. We brought in an extra student planner to cover him, but again, those hours were not billed to the municipalities. So in terms of major projects, well, first of all, I guess of the total number of county hours, over 800 of those hours were my hours, the director of planning, which is managing the department, doing county work, but also some of the bigger projects. For example, the communal services project last year, that was 400 hours of our time. There's a lot of work on that file last year, and most of those hours were my hours. The community planning permit system, if you remember, all 4 townships agreed to invest in this project. You allocated up to $125,000. We're under budget. Your staff are heavily involved in this. Mr. Kurliovich is the project manager. This is deemed to be a county project. It's not being billed to the townships, but your staff are working in developing the bylaw. It is somewhat complicated. It's a brand new planning tool. Bottom line is it's really going to make a positive step in protecting your waterfront. But we expect that it's going to take most of this year to refine that work, educate both the public and staff, and probably look at implementation not until next year. We're also reviewing the new official plan for South Frontenac Township. Because County Council is the approval authority for that plan, that is deemed to be a county file. They've been working on a new update. Their existing plan is 25 years old. Been working on a new update for about 3 years. They've got we believe to be a close to final draft. Ms. Bolton has been leading that, and we spent over 75 hours last year on that work. We expect it to be in front of County Council before May or June of this year. So what's in store for moving forward? As I just mentioned, we're going to keep working full speed ahead on getting this permit system implemented. The communal services project, I'm certainly not as involved as I was. I'm working with the utility on best practices. We are working on amending your official plan. I believe on Friday, May 9th, the afternoon of Friday, May 9th, we're going to schedule a public information session here. Is it in the afternoon? Okay. And we don't know where yet, but okay. that will be, so it's not a formal public meeting under the Planning Act. We want it to be more of, ask us any question you have. So it'll be a planning staff. We've also asked one of the directors from the company in Brockville that builds these systems, Newterra. He's coming as well to talk directly about what this technology is. I know it's complicated, and I've been working on this project for 8 years, and I still respect that the public don't understand what this can do, and he can explain that very well. So he'll be here as well. Excuse me. Regional Natural Heritage Study, which is an update to work that was done in 2012 that formed the foundational piece to the first county official plan. It's basically looking at our natural environment and how best to protect it. County Council actually gave us budget money 3 years ago. We weren't able to start the work because of all of our time spent with the townships, but I'm now working on the terms of reference. That work will get going this year. And then there is a necessity to update the county plan, the regional plan. Was approved by the ministry in 2016. If you recall, our county plan is very high level, and it's done intentionally, and it clearly says that the detailed planning direction for each municipality will be the municipality's decision. It's more about the planning priorities that are important for the entire region. I don't expect a lot of work on this update relative to the work involved putting the plan together for the first time, which took 3 years. This is more of amendments to the plan to bring it up to date with policies and some of the other changes. But we'll be taking a work plan to county council this year. And all of these projects are relevant to you. And then some of the work we're doing at the townships that will probably take some time. We're still working with Central Frontenac on developing their former school site in Charbot Lake on communal services, the South Frontenac plan, working with the village of Marysville on Wolf Island to redo their zoning in the village, which is very out of date. And then these amendments for communal services, that will be for your official plan as well as Central and the islands. And then some of the things that I consider intangibles, we expect that the number of applications are going to stay close to where they are now, but you just never know. Nor do you ever know how complex a planning application is. That somebody just shows up at your door. And I would say the Palmerston Lake application was a good example. They just showed up and said, we want to do this. And you don't really know how long it's going to take. Can't say for sure if the province is going to make any more changes in the next year or two on provincial planning. Should there be an appeal on any planning file, that will take time. And then subdivision applications, we've had very little activity in the last couple of years. In fact, last year we only spent 20 hours on finalizing some of the subdivisions that were approved a number of years ago. But possibly by 2026, once you've got your plan updated and once the word is out that the Frontenac has got this figured out, I think we'll start to see some small scale private sector developers coming in here. And then any other requests that I can't think of right now, but again, there are little things that may change our hours. So I just want to close by saying that we've spent almost 600 hours here last year, but I dare say that your township staff probably spent half of that at least working on it. It is a real pleasure for our team to work with Ms. Niesky and Ms. Dreschler, who are very professional, and they take a lot of stuff off our plate. And it's a very collaborative work arrangement, and we really appreciate working with you, Tara and Brooke, and it makes a difference. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any questions or comments, Deputy Mayor?
On the question of timing for communal services, Joe, hypothetically, suppose this township wanted to develop a small subdivision using communal services. What year is that 26, 27? Does it become feasible?
Through you, Mayor. So I talked about the planning policies, and those are for your community and for developers. If the township was interested and had land and wanted to start working on this soon, that's very probable that could start working. The utility, as you know, is in place. The utility just hired a chief executive officer. There is a company that is working right now, and they will be the operators of these systems. So they'll be involved at the development stage, explaining what kind of systems need to be put in place and so on. So we're almost ready to go, in my opinion.
I'd like to get in on this one as well, and that's, Joe's 100% correct. The problem is the approval process really hasn't been shortened yet. We are working very diligently with the Ministry of Environment and whatever else they've got on their acronym these days, to the point where the county, with Joe's guidance, we brought them to Brockville earlier this year, showed them what was going on. Like, you build the first truck, then everything after that should be the same. And we're still waiting to hear that we had a change of government. We know our local MPP is right on this. They've already called the county since they've been reelected to say, how can we help? So that's just kind of where we are right now. Councilor Hoodle.
Thanks, Joe. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Just, you mentioned public information concerning this. When is that?
Maybe Tara.
So it's scheduled for May 9th in the afternoon.
And is that during the week? Because we're going to hear from the seasonal people.
So it's a Friday.
It's a Friday.
Yeah.
It's still
Afternoon.
not the best time, but
Well, yeah. Could do it on a Saturday. I mean, our staff could, but I'd have to ask. I think it's really important that new Tara be here as well, because they can answer the technical questions that, you know.
no, I understand that, but I'm going to get calls that, why aren't we having this when seasonal people are here? Especially if we're going to have, any development on lakefronts. It's just a thought, right? And just a correction. We do not have an operator. We have an operational team that is helping us with the technical advisory committee, but the operation part of it still is we haven't decided who that is yet.
I support what, I think May the 9th is really nice, but it might be a little bit too early. If it was a month and a half later in June, that might be a little better. So look what happened with Palmerston Lake, right? So there you go. Any other comments or questions? Corey?
I just wanted to say, Joe, as well, that our staff are really enjoying working with yourself and your team as well. So it's really beneficial and a mutual feeling. And I know I'm always hearing Tara and Brooke say how wonderful it is to work with you guys.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I would echo that, but considering I'm an engineer, I'm never wrong. If I said anything, it doesn't leave any room for you to make an error later. But thanks for all your
Is there
cooperation.
3 engineers on council?
Just 2. Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here.
No, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. And we'll look at changing that date for sure.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives for information the presentation from Joe Gallivan, Director of Planning and Economic Development, regarding planning services in 2025-2026 work plan, and thanks him for his time spent today.
Any final comments? Stephanie, do you have any comments?
No, I do agree with Councillor Hudel, though. I think something in June, and ideally a Saturday morning or at some point would be better. He and I both would have a lot of seasonal people that will want to be at that meeting.
Okay. Thank you. In favor? Motion's carried. Okay, next presentation is from Cambium Incorporated Annual Waste Sites Report. We have Michael Pion. Did I pronounce that right? Correct. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Pion. I work for Cambium. I was brought on 10 years ago at Cambium to help with the acquisition of 10 years ago, we took on the township contracts for the waste disposal sites. They hired me directly to assist with that. So I've been working with the township in regards to the waste disposal sites for 10 years. Today, we're going to provide you an update on what has happened at these sites. over the past calendar year. There are 9 sites that we're going to go through, so it's going to be a bit lengthy. So if you do have questions as we go, feel free to ask. So we're going to discuss the results of our annual monitoring programs, what we included in our reports, findings of our site inspections, as well as updates on landfill capacity to see where you are at for your waste disposal. An update on how much site life is available. We're going to discuss some of the operational informations. And then there's some ongoing discussions there with changes to monitoring programs and operations at a couple of the sites, as well as some additional requirements to meet ministry guidelines. So again, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to ask. So the 506 waste disposal site, it's an active landfill as well as a transfer station. In 2024, the site was reconfigured for ease of access. So the township built an extra road so that we can get to the active area a bit easier. So if you can see on this picture, the new road there loops in from the attendant shelter and loops around. It just will control vehicular access a bit easier. A new attendant shelter was also installed at the site last year. So in part of our environmental monitoring program, we're on site doing groundwater, surface water monitoring. The results of that indicated that there's no adverse impacts to the receiving groundwater or surface water resources, which is great. We're there in the autumn doing our topographic capacity survey. So there's going to be an update on where that site is at the end of this presentation. And then we also do an annual monitoring report for the site. In terms of our site inspections, there was a couple of things that were noted at the site. One thing was that additional cover material is required on some of the waste that we saw around MW3B. So that'd be on the bottom half of the map. That said, when we're on site doing our inspections, it's at one point in time. So this may have been addressed since our last site visit in October. And then another item of note is along the surface water course to the south that you can see near the bottom of the map. We did note a bit of litter in that area, as well as going into the periphery tree lines. The transfer station as a whole, it looks great. So it is well maintained. These periphery areas of the sites, it's pretty common because we're generally the only people visiting there, and the landfill attendants aren't going to go venture into the woods that, typically we're the only eyes out there. So we do recommend, if there's a point where there's some extra hands, to get out there and do a bit of litter cleanup. But from the public eye in the transfer station areas and the staging areas, they are looking great. So this site was operated in compliance with the ministry regulations in 2024. So we're in good shape there. So the next site we're going to talk about is the Ardoch waste disposal site. This site was temporarily closed in 2013. At the time of closure, there's about 20,000 cubic meters of waste remaining. So that was about the equivalent of 38 years of site life. There's one caveat here that 38 years is based on historical fill rates from that time. So between 2008 and 2013. Now, diversion practices are getting better. The town has reuse options as well. So those values, that 38 years might be different once we reassess. So that recently the township has proposed for us to look at opening the site on a limited basis for basically township operations. So we wouldn't be open to the public. And it's basically going to be there just to meet the capacity requirements. So they're going to be hauling the waste from the transfer stations over there. Now, in terms of getting the ball rolling on that, it does require Ministry of the Environment pre-consultation to see if they're in general agreement to begin the process. See if they have any recommendations. They can review the file. Again, the site's been open or was open up to 2013, and we've been doing environmental monitoring since then. So they do have an idea of what the conditions are currently at the site. So it requires some pre-consultation. We have to submit a design and operations plan for the site 2 years prior to the site reopening. And then there's going to be some neighbor notifications. You can't just show up and have a landfill operating again. You do need to notify your neighbors as a part of the ministry approval process, and then we do need to submit an ECA application. So that's what we're looking into currently. However, right now, as is, the site has been closed and capped. In 2022, we received reductions to the monitoring program, so the environmental monitoring programs, for discontinuation of the summer surface water monitoring event, landfill gas monitoring in the one of the events in the winter. One of the monitoring wells no longer needs to be sampled, and the ministry did ask that we do some VOC sampling at one of the wells. So again, we are seeing the reductions there based on the current status of the site. We also did receive reporting reduction frequencies, which is also nice to see. So instead of submitting a report once every year, now they're required to be submitted once every 3 years. So that is a cost savings right there for the township. So with that being said, we just finished the report for the last 3-year cycle. So the next report will be from 2025 to 2027, submitted in 2028. There's no adverse impacts offsite to the groundwater or the surface water. So the site is being operated in compliance with the ECA, and the landfill gas measurements measured at the site continue to remain low. So here's the current layout of the RDOC site, and you can see there that the site closed in 2013. There was still capacity available. So you can see that red line there is where the waste currently sits. Then the gray line's the approved fill area. So there's space for filling there. So the next site we're going to talk about is Kashwackamack. So that's a transfer station and active landfill. Where they're doing the groundwater monitoring, the capacity surveys every year, and then we do a monitoring report every year. We're currently in the process of an action plan with the ministry to determine groundwater compliance issues at the site. That said, this has been an ongoing issue. A few years back, we did provide changes to the monitoring program and the groundwater monitoring program, which the ministry was supportive of. So they did see that we were raising an issue that there are redundant monitoring locations. The ministry was fine with that. They also supported reductions to the VOC sampling requirements, but because we need director approval for these changes to be implemented, and we're up in the air with the groundwater compliance right now, we're doing additional work to figure out how to address that. And then once we have an adequate monitoring program figured out, we're going to go to the ministry with that. So right now it is a bit fluid. I'm going to get into what the results of the work we've done to date so far on the next slides. Next, the landfill gas at the site. Again, we're not measuring concentrations of concern. And in terms of when we're there on site, the transfer stations are looking good, but the active areas where the landfilling activities are happening, litter does move from animals, from birds, from wind. It's good just to keep some eyes out there and relocate some of the litter if there's extra hands available. The township does use litter control fencing, as well as they build berms, and they do have these mitigation measures in place. That doesn't stop a seagull from picking up a piece of plastic and moving it into some of the tree lines. So just keeping an eye on that area is always good to get out there and get them cleaned. The landfill operations, we're operating in compliance with the ECA. So because of our groundwater situation at the site, we had to do an action plan to assess. The ministry asked us to delineate where our groundwater impacts are going. So last spring and late spring, we installed a couple monitoring wells to delineate our groundwater impacts. 2 of them were installed offsite to the south, so that 102.24 and that 103.24. Those are installed offsite on Crown land. We had to get the permits, land use permits for these. And then we had to install those 101S and 101D on the east side of the site to assess compliance that way. The good news is that at 102.24 and 103.24, impacts were not migrating offsite. Those 2 wells are bedrock wells. There's no overburden area in that area. It's a bedrock ridge. So there's no impacts in the bedrock water quality there. That said, because we did see ministry compliance issues at 107S and 107D, we still have to figure out where our impacts are going. So what we're proposing to do, based on what we saw at the water quality results at those 2 wells offsite and the ones at the property boundary, we're thinking that the groundwater there is leaching, is upwelling to surface in that southwestern corner. So that big blank, that big open area on the left side of the map, we're thinking it's upwelling there. We have visual evidence of that from getting the drill rig out there. It is quite wet, so we had to build quite an extensive road just to get it out there. What we propose to do for that side of the site, we want to make sure that the township needs to be in care and control of contamination. So we just need to make sure that we're going to assess the vegetative community there. We're going to see, we're going to do a surface water reconnaissance. So we're going to see if it's actually surface water upwelling. We're going to assess the wetland, potential wetland boundaries based on our field observations, as well as we're proposing to install some shallow monitoring wells that we can do by hand, just to assess the relationship between groundwater and surface water there and see if that's what is happening at the site. On the flip side, to the east of the site at 101S and D, so the overburden well, the shallow well there, we're not seeing minimal, we're seeing minimal to no impacts from the site, whereas in the bedrock there, we are seeing some impacts. But our initial thoughts is because we've only collected groundwater samples there twice, we might be seeing just elevated concentrations from the drilling. So the compliance to that side of the site is still up in the air. We need to do extra, just a couple extra groundwater samples just to see where we're at. And then we'll derive our action plan. We did submit to the ministry a contingency plan in December saying, this is what we saw from our drilling program. This is what we propose to do. So what I talked about now, the ministry has to give us approval and comment before we can go ahead with this. So we have to wait to see what happens. And then they're just going to continue working along. And once the ministry is satisfied, we can get that monitoring program revised and we can move forward. So the next site we're going to talk about is the Mississippi Waste Disposal Site. It's an active landfill and transfer station. We're there doing the groundwater surface water monitoring. We do a topographic capacity survey, and then we do a report every year. There's no adverse impacts in the groundwater or the surface water at the site. Landfill gas concentrations remain low, and similar with any of the active sites, we just continue recommending looking in those periphery areas around where landfilling is occurring just to do some cleanup, continue using those litter control fencing and berms just to make sure that it's those periphery areas are maintained. And then the site operated in compliance with the ECA in 2024. So this is just the layout of the site there. So our next site is the Plevna Waste Disposal Site. It's a transfer station, active landfill. We're there, they're doing the monitoring for groundwater, surface water, and landfill gas. We do a capacity survey every year, and then we also report on it every year. In 2024, we received a new amended environmental compliance approval. That was the initial driver of that was based on a trigger mechanism that needed to be updated that we found wasn't truly reflecting the conditions of the site. And the ministry, the reviewers agreed with us and they said, you may go ahead and ask for amend the ECA. And in the process of amending the ECA, because it's the same process, whether we're changing for environmental monitoring or for operations. So we went ahead and we did apply for construction demolition waste processing on site. So now the stockpiles there can be processed, mixed with soil, with cover material, and then used as daily cover, which is a good space saving method. And you're not hauling construction demolition waste offsite. You're going to be landfilling it, but also using it as cover. So it is multi-purpose. And then we also threw in the caveat for flexibility for the township that we get the option to operate a reuse center in the future. At the 506 site specifically, there is a reuse center there. And last year had 5 tons of waste diverted from the landfill, which is a lot. So that's a good success story there. So currently there's no adverse impacts in the groundwater or surface water environments. Landfill gas concentrations are remaining low. And then this site is a known one for bears, so just continue with the bear control management practices and continue with the berms and the litter control fences, and then just keep an eye on the periphery areas. The site was operating in compliance with the ECA in 2024, and the township is currently in the process of installing a new attendant shelter at the site, so it's almost there. So the Cloyne waste disposal site, it's a closed landfill that currently works as or operates as a transfer station. It's a shared site for the residents of Addington Highlands as well as North Frontenac. There's specific bins, waste bins designated for the Addington Highland residents as well as the North Frontenac, so that the waste gets hauled to the appropriate disposal sites. Recycling material, they're all in shared bins. We're there on site doing groundwater and surface water monitoring as well as reporting. In the tier 1 of the surface water trigger mechanism was activated again. We are trying to get revisions to this this mechanism and comments from the ministry. So we're seeing slight road salt impacts at the property boundary as well as some minor landfill impacts, but they're not adverse. Last year, we did some toxicity sampling on this water course in the spring and autumn, and we can directly relate that to our water quality results because we're sampling them at the same time, and we're looking, and the results show that we were not seeing any adverse effects for fish. So what we're proposing is we want to do toxicity sampling once every 5 years to make sure that the site is still complying with the surface water trigger mechanisms, as well as if we see deteriorating conditions in the surface water quality, we might propose another toxicity sampling just to confirm, because we don't want to be impacting fish communities, obviously. So the toxicity sampling last year did provide us with some really good information about the site. The reason to the north of the waste mound, of the closed waste mound, we are seeing flooding, and it's a part due to beaver activity on site, and it's where the groundwater is upwelling to. So we're seeing both. So what we're proposing is that groundwater monitoring there, the groundwater trigger mechanism for the site is considered redundant, and we should be focusing our compliance on the surface water quality. So we're trying to see if the ministry can give us support for reductions to discontinue that groundwater trigger mechanism program, focus on surface water. But to date, we haven't received any ministry comments. There is some minor blown litter along the surface water course. So if safe to do so, it would be good to clean that up as well. The landfill gas concentrations remain low at the site, and it was operated in compliance with the ECA in 2024. So on this image there, you can see the flooded area and where the beaver dam is. It is recommended that the flooding at the site has been ongoing for years. So it is recommended that we just keep an eye on the water levels there. We don't want to see the beaver dam grow and the water keep going up. So if it gets worse, then it is always good to reach out to us when you're checking down there, and we can figure out the best steps going forward. So basically a passive monitoring of the flooded area is great. So the Ampa waste disposal site, it's a transfer station, closed landfill. We do monitoring and reporting, but this is done every 3 years, and the reporting is every 3 years. So the next time we're there is in 2026. The last time we were there was in 2023. We saw no adverse impacts offsite to the groundwater or surface water, and the trigger mechanisms were not activated. So the site was operating in compliance with the ECA. And there's the current layout of the site there. So the Gull Lake waste disposal site is a closed landfill. closed in 1991. We're there once a year in the spring. We report every 2 years on it. We're currently in year two of the monitoring cycle. So the next report will be in 2026. There's a minor leachate signature at the bottom in the adjacent wetland, but impacts will be, any potential impacts are going to be attenuated before they reach Big Gull Lake. And then the site was operated in compliance with the ECA in 2024. And there's this little layout of the site there. So the last site we're looking at today is the Fernley closed landfill. We're there doing the monitoring and we're monitoring 3 times a year for groundwater, surface water, and landfill gas. And the reporting is done once a year. We're not seeing any adverse impacts offsite in the groundwater or surface water. There's no measurable landfill gas concentrations either of concern. We propose for discontinuation of monitoring at the site. So far, we have surface water support under one caveat that the groundwater reviewer agrees with our interpretation of which way groundwater is flowing. So we have to wait for our comments from the groundwater reviewer, and then we can go from there. If we get approval for a discontinuation of reporting and monitoring, the only thing that's required left at the site would be to do some site inspections at surface water 2 in this area where groundwater is upwelling. So we just need to make sure that we're not seeing any visual impacts of that could be visual impacts of visual signs of impacts to that surface water area, surface water 2 in the corner there. Once we receive groundwater comments, we can go from there. It does require a revised ECA before we can implement the changes at the site. So again, that is good. So summary of what's going on at the township. Township's very good at keeping their employees trained. They do the landfill operating training yearly, as well as they provide health and safety training to the staff working at the sites. Aesthetically, transfer stations and closed sites look great. The periphery areas where your site attendants typically wouldn't go to, just the Cambium staff going to collect their water samples would see, they could use a bit of tidying up. There were no notable complaints or incidents at the sites reported in 2024. There's some additional work to be done at Kashwakimak. The monitoring program right now is fluid. We need to assess what is going on at the site, and then we're going to go to the district manager once we have an idea of what we're going to propose for the monitoring program. So we're going to go to the ministry. They need to review our work, and then we can assess from there. We're pending groundwater comments from Fernley, so there might be discontinuation of the monitoring and reporting program at that site. And then there may be some proposed changes to the operations at Ardoch, which could be a township run, a non-public operated waste disposal site. So this for the township. So landfill capacities. So this is a breakdown by all the sites. So 506, Kashwakimak, Mississippi, and Plevna are your active sites that are currently landfilling. The busiest, or the site that received the most waste in 2024 was Plevna. And then the quietest site received the least amount of waste, 200 cubic meters at Mississippi. The one thing to note about Plevna is because of we got the approval for changes to waste processing and using alternative daily cover. That 450 is more of a true value because of looking at how much waste is going in, because capacities there incorporate cover material. So if you're trying to plan how much garbage the township's generated, we usually see about 80% of that value there, because when we're surveying, we can't know what cover material versus waste. So from a planning perspective, we go, 80% waste, 20% is cover material. But in terms of capacity raising, we went up those true values there. So based on this, we're seeing some changes of site life over 2023 to 2024. So at 506, Mississippi, and Plevna, we've seen an increase in site life versus at Kashwakimak, where we saw a decrease. Again, I'm going to get into a bit more of this on the next slide here. What happens with capacities at landfills is there's a lot that goes into figuring out site life. So we're looking at 5-year averages at all the sites. So as a brief exercise, I looked at, if you could see here, from 2020 to 2024, we went from 49 years in 2020 to 59. And then in the middle, we have about 55 on average. That's great. You're trending in the right direction. You want to conserve the space. The space is valuable. That could be attributed to, the reuse program, 5 tons of reuse at 506 in 1 year. The diversion practices, the education you're providing to the residents of what material goes where, tires, recycling, scrap metal, as well as how the sites are developed. So when we go do the capacity surveys, if we're surveying a rougher surface, there's going to be more error and more error in that active area where the surfaces are rough compared to a flat surface. So that's why when we're assessing site life, projecting in the future, we always do an average. We always look at that 5 years. So to account for any of those errors over time. So when I looked at the 5-year average for 2020, for 2024 to 2019, and then I looked at 2019 to 2014. In those years, the biggest change was about 200 cubic meters less at 506, which is quite substantial. So it is showing that these diversion practices and the education you're providing your residents, it is working. So good on that. If the site, if the township, so we have the 59 years there, that includes the reopening of RDOC. If RDOC is not reopened, there's about 47 years of site life remaining for the township. So still, the township is trending in the right direction, but 59 to 47 is different. So that's one thing to consider, with your waste management planning going forward. And then I'll just go over the blue box material again. It is being very successful. Your landfill attendants are trained annually to look for these materials, tell people where to go. I'm sure at this point the residents are coming in and just know exactly where to go, where to dispose of these products, and how to organize their cars when they're coming into the site. So the blue box material, it's almost 160 tons a year. Is the most notable there. But again, pulling out that scrap metal and not landfilling it, 102 tons a year is also it stands out on the page right there. Overall, 345 tons between all the active sites is fantastic. So just, keep up the education there, and the landfill attendants are doing a great job of instructing the residents coming into the site. So good on them. Now I'll open up to questions if anyone has any.
Do you have any questions for council? Deputy Mayor.
Nobody else is asking a question. I'll ask my same old question every year. So we've got 59 years left. That's a long time. All be dead. But is Cambium or anybody thinking about the time after that? Like, where's this all headed? Is there any planning happening for alternate processes? We will run out of space.
Eventually, yes. The current state in Ontario as a whole is there's 10 years of capacity left for the province. That's not including your small municipal landfills. That's just the large the mega landfills, the millions of cubic meter ones. Yeah, exactly. That said, the border's closed, and they can't haul waste off site. Those increase faster, this increased faster. There is always discussions about alternative waste methods such as incineration. That said, everything costs money, and that is a very, very expensive process to get into, and the approvals take a long time. In terms of currently, the best option is diversion. We don't know what the future is going to bring. very hard to get approvals for new landfills. So education in the public is key. In terms of 59 years from now, it's hard to see, it's hard to know what 10 years in technology is going to change, right? So the forecast 59 years down the road is quite a long way.
Thank you very much. I'm just thinking of the acknowledgement that we read at the beginning of every meeting. Native peoples have always thought 7 generations ahead. 59 years is a lot less than 7 generations. And
Yeah, no kidding. The Ministry of the Environment uses a 25-year planning period for that. That's when we're planning for capacities for landfills. If we go in with a 25 planning period, the ministry generally agrees that that's the best practice for a township because population growth increases and decreases. It changes over 25 years, right? So who knows what 59 years with this township will look like.
Counselor Fowler, then Counselor Hermer.
Yes, the new Blue Box program that we're going to be introducing here, is that going to affect you, or are you going to still be around doing the monitor?
Oh, yeah. So the reporting for the blue boxes changes, but the monitoring and the reporting process will still stay the same. We still need to report quantities. We still need to do the environmental monitoring as well.
Very good presentation. You're very thorough.
Thank you.
Counselor Hermer.
You were saying that the provincial average is 10 years, and yet they look ahead for 25 years. So what are they doing?
That's a good question. It's hard to say. It truly is. They want. In Ontario, there's 2 incinerators. York Durham Energy, which they're holding on to their quantities. They're because that area is growing substantially fast, and they're expanding that incinerator in stages. So they have a phase 1 and a phase 2, which is in line with the population growth. So they don't want waste coming in there, but again, they have to keep in mind that they still have to feed the incinerator. So they have to keep it at the temperature. So they still need incoming waste. So it is quite the battle. Again, the waste management, the technologies bringing to the tables are changing all the time, but right now we're looking at diversion as our best option.
Well, my concern there, the reason I brought that up is if they're not making plans now as to what they're going to do, it almost appears like they're going to wait and let the crash happen and then download it to municipalities.
Yeah. So what we're seeing very common right now is larger areas like Ottawa just did their waste management plans. Peterborough is currently in the process of doing theirs. So a lot of these larger areas are trying to figure out forecasting for exactly this in the future and see what technologies are feasible. With all these plans that are coming together, maybe there can be an effort put together to invest in some of these technologies that are coming forward because they're all very expensive, right? So maybe not one township can buy it, but maybe 4 or 5 can put their money together and invest, right? So,
Counselor Hoodle.
So I'm very aware of the AFW in York Durham, but are there any, do you know of any other new ones that are coming online? You mentioned there's 2 in Ontario, but
yeah, I'm not aware of any. So,
Counselor Herman, do you have another question? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, Michael. It was very interesting.
no problem. Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Motion. Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the presentation from Michael Pion, Project Manager of Cameo Incorporated, providing the annual update of the township waste sites, and thanks him for his time spent today.
Any comments? Any final comments? In favor of this resolution? Resolution's carried. Okay, we have no delegations, so adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council adopts the minutes dated February 21st, 2025 as circulated.
In favor? Carried. Okay. Caledonia annual report 2024, and we have Chief Casey Cuddy with us. I'll let you do your presentation. How do you want to do this? Sorry. You almost got it. I was trying. Can you read the resolution and then we do that?
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved, the council receives for information the Caledonia Annual Report 2024 from the Caledonia Fire Chief Casey Cuddy, and the council thanks Chief Cuddy for the report.
Any comments? Counselor Hermer.
A question for Casey. I see on the calls for service, there was 1% dedicated to North Frontenac. Is that consistent over the years?
Thank you. That is beyond the Ward 1 that we look after under the normal response. So that would just be something that we came over and assisted North Frontenac Fire Department with.
And now do you find that that's relatively consistent over the years?
Yeah, it's anywhere from 1 to 3 sort of thing a year. I'd have to look back to see, but going through my memory, I would say it's between 1 and 3 calls a year usually.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Casey, I just noticed your capital planning for the future is laid out slightly different from what we see here in our 10-year asset management plans. Is there any discussion about formatting that asset management plan or not?
If you're looking just at the report, it just basically gives you a guideline. When it comes to the budget, it's laid out differently. If that helps.
Thanks.
Okay, so I have one question. Do you have enough money long-term? Well, like you're sitting at 1.1 million or roughly 1.3. And if you take a look at, is 850,000 or 650,000 is that included in the 1.3 million or is that already off? Because when I take it and I start just adding $200,000 a year and I start deducting, we're going to have a problem at about 8 or 9 years. So. what do you
Yes,
think?
yes, that's when we get into the budget next, there's actually the last page of the budget does a balance on that and lays out, and we did do a great jump this year in our contributions to reserves to start to get back up to the effects of the last couple of years of inflation.
So the 200 plus whatever's going to happen in the next month or two. So the 200,000 a year contribution from both townships is probably going to increase. It's going to
Yeah.
have to increase.
Yes, in the plan and in the budget portion, the plan is to increase it again next year, the same as we did this year.
So at some point in time, well, obviously can't do it today. Can you give us basically do the budget? So here's how much we've got, take off X, add Y, take off X, add Y. So we know over the next 10 years exactly what it is. I mean, you've got it here saying these are our expenses, $4.496 million. So that's on the apparatus and equipment apparatus. And then there's another 526,000. So at what point in time do we run out of money or do we? I looked at 2000 and roughly 33, 34, 35, somewhere in there. We're going to be behind the 8 ball.
Yes, sorry, unfortunately, not everything comes to council that goes to the Joint Fire Committee, but so if based on if we go to the 200,000 reserves that we went to this year in 2033, we would be in the red. But if we increase again next year, we just stay above the red, given the current cost of items.
That's a 2033. Then there's 2037. Of course, the 200,000 plus a year would be okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I can provide you with this if you like. It was the summary that we did at the Joint Fire Committee.
Anybody want this or? In fact, people in the fire committee have already seen it, so we're okay. We know where it is if we need it. Thank you. Stephanie, do you have any questions?
In regards to this, no, not at this time.
Deputy Mayor?
So, Mr. Mayor, I guess you were asking, what can we expect at this table for requests in the next 10 years are, we don't want any big surprises in requests. Is that what you're asking?
It started last year, and then this year there's 50,000 more to make it 200,000. I'm just asking, is it going to be enough? And what can we see long-term? What's gonna be required so that the fire service, as far as equipment goes, stays above board? So at some point in time, we're not looking at a $500,000 debt because we need a truck. We've been under 25 years. Truck's gotta go, whether it has to go or not, it has to go. And what do? Where does that money come from?
Yeah, I think it is good to have that plan, but we're always hit by surprises like culvert down the road. At 300,000, so even with all that planning, it could be far worse than we think.
Could be. I just want to make sure that when we have the information in front of us, that we do have enough. So I would like to see if it's possible for budget time, for our budget time, is it possible to see what this fire department is projecting over the next 5 years? So we're looking at additional 50,000 a year or 25,000 a year or whatever. So we would have a relatively decent idea what's going on. And I wouldn't have to ask this question. Okay. You do that for us? Thanks, Chief, appreciate it. And of course, that applies to us as well. So for North Frontenac's department. Any other comments? In favor of Casey's report? Carried. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you being here. Okay, resolution 725, fire department 25 budget.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel, whereas at the meeting held February 14th, 2025, the Caledonia Joint Fire Committee passed Resolution 725, receiving for information the draft 2025 budget for the Caledonia Fire Department and approved the budget with the following amendment to increase insurance to $22,875 to reflect the actual cost recently provided. Now therefore be it resolved that council receives for information the draft Caledonia Fire Department 2025 budget, and the council approves the budget as approved in principle by the committee. The council instructs the clerk to provide this resolution to the Caledonia Fire Chief, the clerk for the Township of Addington Highlands, and the Joint Fire Committee.
Comments? In favor of the resolution? Oh, sorry, Counselor Hudel, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. I wasn't at the last couple of meetings because I was away, but in this presentation here or the spreadsheet here, the only thing I would like to see is you have your 2025 budget, you have your 2024 budget, but I don't see what your actuals were. So I don't know how far under or over you were. Maybe you can tell us now or.
I'm going to go by memory because I don't have it right in front of me, but we were under, I don't remember the exact amount, but we were under, I want to guess about 30,000. I can verify it and get back to you.
All right, any other questions? Once again, in favor of the resolution? That resolution is carried. Thank you. Okay, item 9C, Senior of the Year nominees.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel, whereas at the meeting held on February 21st, 2025, council received for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Senior of the Year Award 2025 nominations, and council deferred the nominations until the next council meeting for additional candidates to be considered for the award. Now therefore be resolved that council nominates, and it's blank, as Senior of the Year and instructs the clerk to submit the application prior to April 30th. And that council nominates blank for the Ontario Achievement Award and instructs the clerk to obtain 2 testimonial letters and submit the application prior to June 15th, 2025.
Comments? So when we deferred this last year, we said we would take any additional. Sorry, last meeting, we said we'd take any additional nominees. We have Betty Hunter for the Frontenac Award, our North Frontenac Award, and we had a recommendation for Lois Eamon. Since then, actually, as of last evening, I received a note from Mary Kelly from the Garden Club, And I'll just read part of it. You may have seen where she was recently awarded the Queen Elizabeth XI Medal or II Medal for good citizenship, second highest in award in Ontario for volunteers. Lois took the food bank in Cloyne from the brink of bankruptcy to what it is today, a place that is well stocked and is open to everyone who needs their help. She and her husband Red have been using their own gas and car expenses to go each week to shop for food in Napanee and Belleville. If anyone deserves all the awards they can get, she and Red do, and we will be recommending them both for the Citizen of the Year Award at Addington Highlands. So we already have Lois Eamon's recommendation or nomination, and we have Betty Hunter. Boy.
So I was the one who nominated Betty Hunter, and I just wanted to go through, because I didn't have a whole list, and there's a whole list of stuff that she's done. So Economic Development Task Force for the past 12 years, she served 2 terms on council. She was part of the Frontenac Business Services for over 10 years, Eastern Ontario Community Futures Development, Pine Meadow Nursing Home Family Support Council, Pine Meadow Nursing Home Management Committee. She was part of the Land O'Lakes Community Services, North Frontenac Amateur Astronomy Club, a founding member. She's part of the Claremont Volunteer Groups, and she's plays a heavy part in the committee, events committee. She does a lot of work with the River Life Christian Fellowship Church. Held position as the chair of the County of Frontenac Community Development. She was part of the advisory committee of the County of Frontenac 150th anniversary. She's part of the North Frontenac Studio Tour, and she's also part of the North Frontenac Historical Society when it started. And just as of last Sunday, we needed help once at the Bay of Quinte, the Quinte Sportsman Show, and she was there on Sunday helping support North Frontenac.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, what are your wishes, councilors? Oh, sorry, Councilor Regent, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, so we're nominating somebody for Senior of the Year and a separate person for the Achievement Award?
Yeah, it's for Senior of the Year for North Frontenac, and then we have the provincial one, which is the second one.
Right, so Betty would be for which award?
First one, North Frontenac Award, Senior of the Year.
Okay, I would agree with Roy. I think that's an excellent choice.
Getting naughty, so we elect to go with Betty Hunter. We commend Lois Eamon and all her hard work. I've been to the food bank, and it's an amazing operation, and they work hard. But I think as far as North Frontenac goes, Betty Hunter in this case may be a slightly better choice. She may have touched more people. So Betty Hunter it is. Well, we have to go through the nomination again, right? Or through the resolution. How does that work? Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Lois Eamon is a resident of Addington Highlands, is she not? No. She is a resident and is competing legal. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll put that into the resolution, and then we have for the Ontario Senior of the Year, we have Barb Sproul. Are there any objections to Barb or any additional recommendations or nominations? Barb Sproul it is. Ontario will read the resolution again.
Now therefore be it resolved that council nominates Betty Hunter as Senior of the Year and instructs the clerk to submit the application prior to April 30th. And that council nominates Barb Sproul for the Ontario Achievement Award and instructs the clerk to obtain 2 testimonial letters and submit the application prior to June 15th.
In favor? Resolution's carried. Okay. Item D, Eurasian Water Milfoil meeting with North Frontenac and Addington Highlands Council, Ministries, MPs, and MPPs.
Moved by Councillor Hudel, second by Councillor Hermer, whereas at the meeting held on October 25th, 2024, Council passed Resolution 35024, receiving a letter from the Mazenod Property Owners Association, the MPOA, regarding government action to manage Eurasian water milfoil invasive species. And the Council supported the request for a meeting with representatives from the Township of North Frontenac, the Township of Addington Highlands, MPs and MPPs in both ridings, senior level representatives from MNRF, the Department of Oceans and Fisheries, and the Mississippi Valley Conservation Conservation Authority and that council instructed the CAO to work with Addington Highlands CAO to coordinate a meeting. Now therefore be resolved that council receives for information an email dated February 26, 2025 from the CAO advising the Addington Highlands Council decided to pare down the meeting regarding Eurasian milfoil previously approved by both councils as it has been difficult to get response from several of the ministries and to reduce the invitation to the MPs, MPPs, MPOA, and other lake associations and the previously designated councilors and staff. And that North Frontenac Council hereby rescinds Resolution 35024 and directs the CAO to work with Addington Highlands CAO to assist in setting up a meeting with the local MPs and MVPs, the MPOA, other lake associations, Addington Highlands councilors, Councillor Hudel and Councillor Regent to discuss Eurasian water milfoil and the importance of the MPs and MPPs lobbying for assistance with controlling and or funding the eradication of Eurasian water milfoil.
Any comments? Deputy Mayor.
I haven't been following this really closely, but reading this, it seems to me that MPOA is mad at Addington Highlands for caving in. Is that what's happening?
I don't have an answer for that. But there is a letter from MPOA that suggests that other lake associations not be there. I suggest that in respect to that, really, I don't know if Addington Highlands has a group of lake associations like we do. But I suggest one member from the North Frontenac Lake Association Alliance be there to represent all the lake associations, or you're going to have up to 18 more people in this meeting and trying to organize it. It just doesn't seem, it's logistically very, very difficult to do, and it will be a very difficult meeting to manage if that would happen. Corey?
I think the concern was, there's other lake associations in Addington Highlands that would not be, so the North Frontenac Lake Association, they're already kind of involved with the MPOA, but the ones that are in Addington Highlands are not. So I think Addington Highlands Council was concerned about other lake associations within Addington Highlands being left out that aren't part of already the association. And so I think that's where this came from, is my understanding.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Well, we have to respond somehow, but my understanding is that the federal department, DFOA, provincial group, MNR, and Mississippi Valley are not responding to this request for input and to do anything about Eurasian milfoil. It's not going to happen at the municipal level. You absolutely need 3 government input, and it seems to me that MPOA is insisting on that.
Corey? I don't want to ask Councilor Regent what she has an opinion on this. No, I want you first.
Yeah, what I was going to say now. Why don't we go to Councilor Regent? We'll
Okay.
come back to me.
Councilor Regent, you have a closer association than anyone here with this, so can you weigh in on it, please?
Of course, I think Corey's on the right track. I think he's explained this quite well. I think really the initial point of all of this was to meet with the MPOA. There's no doubt there's other lakes that have the same concern, but I think I think the intention was that this was the starting point. Corey, does that make sense? I think you've explained it correctly.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. I think that was the intent, is to meet with the MPOA and whoever we can get together, which might prove to be a little difficult within the next few weeks if there's an election. So we might want to move on this as quickly as we can.
No, that may have changed already this morning, so, or about to change. Corey?
So MVC did get back. They were great about getting back. It's the ministries that they're having a hard time with. And I think when this first came up, we had said right at this table, it's going to be pretty hard to get all of these ministries and everybody together that can agree. And absolutely, it has proven very difficult. So Addington Highlands Council said, you know what, we want to do this, but let's we have to be realistic about this, and we have to try to, so let's get the MPs and MPPs, lobbying on our behalf, and let's get these meetings going. Otherwise, we could be a year from now before we ever get a meeting together. So I think it's it makes sense to me what they're requesting.
So from my understanding, it's the MPPs, the MP, one member from North Frontenac Lake Association Alliance or two, whatever that is. And who else?
So possibly, again, once you guys approve this, then the Stephanie and Roy and they'll put together the agenda and they'll determine that based on kind of once you guys approve this or not approve it, that's when it'll be decided.
Okay. Your final comments? In favor of the resolution as presented? Carried. Okay, item 10A, Communications A.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel, be it resolved that council receives for information Section A items of the clerk's administrative report entitled Communications of Interest.
Comments? In favor? Carried. There are no issues from Communications B. Action items. Item 11A, Chief Administrative Officer, proposal to update bylaw 1420, being a bylaw to regulate the location, installation, and operation of outdoor solid fuel combustion appliances.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Hermer, be it resolved that council receives for information the Chief Administrative Officer's administrative report entitled Proposed Update to Bylaw 1420, being a bylaw to regulate the location, installation, and operation of outdoor solid fuel combustion appliances, and that an amended bylaw will be presented later in the meeting for council's consideration addressing proposed changes to the bylaw as recommended by the township solicitor.
Comments? Deputy Mayor.
Well, one thing I noticed is you got a 40 meter requirement between the residence and the furnace, but only a 20 meter requirement between the furnace and the property line. That potentially means the guy could put his furnace closer to the neighbor's house than his own. That doesn't make sense to me.
Anyone else? I have an issue with this. A lot of North Frontenac or a number of North Frontenac residents heat with wood. And I kind of know where the genesis of this resolution is coming from. So everything's fine for, say, 200 days of the winter. The wind comes out of a direction, your neighbor's here, the wind's going this way. On the last day of that 200 days, the wind changes, the resident complains, and we have a problem. And it says the resident, you know, what is this resident who owns this wood burning or solid fuel burning appliance supposed to do? What are reasonable measures? In fact, I don't see them being actually defined. It's basically that they have to control their emissions off their property. And then how do we enforce it? By the time you get a bylaw officer there, it's 2 days later. Councilor Hermer.
Well, I know some of these are operational without the required stack.
Or pair. I don't have an answer for this. I'm just saying you have this in place. You're up 10, 15 feet and the wind blows the wrong way and you have an air inversion and then your neighbor gets it and they complain. Councilor Hudel.
So I don't know too much about these. When they install one, are they to be inspected by the CBO? How does that work?
I think so, yes. That's a good question. I can't answer that 100%, but I feel the answer is yes to that. I'm pretty sure that it's all through the building code. Yeah.
Something else I don't see here is the existing ones, are they grandfathered in?
They're grandfathered in from the setbacks. So yeah, so existing ones that were before this bylaw in 2020 became in. The existing one, the setbacks, yes, they're grandfathered in and we can't go back and say, you've got to move this 10 feet or another 10 feet from the we can't do that. The issue here is it's this, you can drive by lots of them and you see the plume of smoke all through the, and it's it's protecting the neighbors. So we're getting neighbors that are saying, for 3 months this all winter, their smoke is coming into my house. It's driving us nuts. We have to be able to do something to say, fix that. And that's what this is all about.
I agree, I've been there. Inhaled that.
Councilor Fowler.
Yes, so I think they're restricted on burning good wood, like they can't put garbage or other refuge in there. They have to use good fuel.
And how do you control that? Well, I'm really kind of at a loss for this. I don't like imposing something like this, but there are issues. you know, is the bylaw written like, it doesn't say reasonable efforts?
So again, I mean, we're not getting complaints for one day of some smoke sifting into somebody's house. I mean, that can happen from a wood stove. We're getting, the complaints we get are the ones where it's consistent and it's constant and it's, you know, it's just something that we have to have something in place to be able to say, you need to fix this. It's up to you to fix this. And if you don't, then here's what the potential, you know, ramifications will be.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, the fact is, these stoves produce a lot more smoke than a standard interior wood stove because of the way air is forced through them. You can run them for 24 hours. If we're going to monitor this and police it, we're gonna have to provide residents who complain with an air quality measuring device. We're gonna have to invest in this. That's the only way a complaint is valid.
Well, I want Councilor Herman first, and then you.
I think everyone knows what wood smoke smells like, and it's very easy to distinguish something different.
Corey?
So this is not new. This bylaw has been in place since 2020. We've made the only changes we're doing is the wording so that if we end up in court, when we give someone that direction and we end up in court, we have a leg to stand on because right now we don't. And that's why I went back to the solicitor and said, we have some issues. Can you help us out here with something so that when we do end up in court, then we're able to actually enforce our bylaw. And that's what this is about. It's not a new bylaw. It's not changing anything. It's just the wording to say, you know, this is how we're going to deal with this. And this is our solicitor felt that this is how we can properly deal with this and not just waste time, money and effort in going to court when we have these concerns.
Councilor Region dropped off, right? Okay, thank you. She has a medical reason for leaving early. Okay, any other comments? Okay, in favor of the motion as presented? 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? You're not voting? That's a
No,
no.
I am, but I'm just sitting here thinking about it. If this is implemented and there's a lot of people that has the wood burning furnaces, but couldn't afford to have it moved or whatever, and they gotta heat their house some way in the wintertime. Like it's more like another big brother step on the poor people that bothers me.
Well, that was my original thought. When I came in here, I had the same opinion as you do, and I still do. But when Corey's saying that, the lawyer says, well, we have to make them do something, whatever that something is. I don't know how you restrict the amount of, you know, other than electrostatic precipitator or something. How do you stop what's in the smoke and so on? And Councillor Fowler?
Yeah, the people are grandfathered in that have them right now, so we're not talking about them having to move it. They can still leave it where it is.
They're
That's what Cory was-
grandfathered in?
So they're grandfathered in from the setbacks. So we have our bylaw here that talks about what the setbacks are. It has to meet all these setbacks. They're grandfathered in from that. But regardless, it's still not okay to set up an outdoor combustion stove like this and then have all your smoke going into your neighbors' homes when they're trying to sleep, right? And that's what we have to try to put a stop to. There is some responsibility there. And again, not a new bylaw. It's just all we're wanting to do is change the wording so that when we do deal with this, we have a leg to stand on. Otherwise, right, like any bylaw, there's no.
I agree with the corrections and update. I think it's good.
Councillor Hoodle?
Corey, how many complaints do we actually get a year with this? Is it?
Very few, but when we do get them, then pretty hard to say, sorry for your luck, kind of thing. Like, we have to deal with it. If we have a bylaw in place, we have to deal with it.
It's kind of hard to promote energy efficiency and somebody harvests wood off their property to do this, and you guys all know the story. So anyway, okay. All right, let's do this again. All in favor of this? Okay, everyone's in favor, is approved. Okay. We are at item B, Updated procedural policy for Committee of Adjustment Planning Advisory Committee.
Moved by Counselor Hurmer, second by Counselor Hudel, be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Updated Procedural Policy for Committee of Adjustment Planning Advisory Committee, and the council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to adopt the new procedural policy.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Item C, Shore Road Allowance Closure and Bylaw, Williams.
Moved by Counselor Hurmer, second by Counselor Hudel, be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Shore Road Allowance Closure and Sale Bylaw Williams, and that as required by bylaw 2023, the following be declared as surplus and sold to the adjoining owner. All that part of the Shore Road allowance around Lake Cashawakmak lying in front of lot 277, registered plan number 1044, geographic township of Barrie, being part 3 on registered plan 13R 22146. That appraisals of the property are not necessary as this is a short road allowance, and the council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to stop up, close, and sell portions of the short road allowance.
Comments? In favor of the resolution? Resolution is carried. Item D, proposed update to procedural policy for members of council, committees, and task force.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Hurmer, be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Proposed Update to the Procedural Policy for Members of Council, Committees, and Task Forces, and the and looking for direction, and the council instructs the clerk to prepare a draft procedural policy for council's review at a future council meeting.
Comments? Deputy Mayor?
Was this a routine review or did some issue arise, Corey?
Tara, do you want to answer that? If it's okay with you, if it's okay if Tara answers that.
So it really is routine. I mean, there's always things that come up. And we were like, we didn't address this in the bylaw. And so you'll see a few things in my report that I noted that probably need to be looked at. It is to be reviewed each term of council. We did do a review at the very beginning of this council term, but that really was a staff review. I just had some stuff that wasn't working and I brought it forward and some of it was adopted by council. So it is kind of the routine. And I'm just looking to see if anyone has comments that they'd like to see, if they see things in the policy that aren't working for them. This really is council's policy and how your meetings will run. So I'm just looking for input from you. Sometimes this is done through like a committee, which is how the county does it. Other times it's just staff driven. I don't know if individual counselors want to provide me comments through email or phone conversation. And then we can bring it back so that it works for council.
Thanks.
So comments? So I have one issue. I think this is all about the way we do business. This is how we operate. So we should have we have a vested interest in it about what's there now and what we want changed. If anything, we want something changed, this is the time to do it. And I think maybe we should consider whether or not we want a committee of council to take a look at this. What are your thoughts? Not that our staff are not good and can't do it. They can do it probably better than we can, but I think we should have, for lack of a better word, some skin in the game. Deputy Mayor?
Well, again, I'm curious about what you might have in mind. I recall back in 2012 or 13 or something, there were some real issues around the procedural bylaw. Wayne and I had a fight about something that's gone.
You must
But-
have lost.
I wouldn't say that. But I think and Bud Clayton brought in this, what I think is revolutionary idea that a counselor could prepare an admin report. I'm not sure anybody else does that. But it's a real fast track to getting an issue on it. But I'm wondering what else you might have in mind.
35 pages of this sucker. So I mean, when you started going through it, I started asking myself, is this okay? Is this what I would want to see? I didn't do all 35. I did some of them. All I'm asking is, are you okay with having our staff do this and then comment on what they come back with? Or do you want to have a greater input from day one, which doesn't mean it's a routine review. It means it's an in-depth review. Counselor Fowler.
I'd be in favor of what you're saying. I think it's good for us as counselors to be able to see changes or make changes if we feel they're needed.
Anybody else? Wayne, you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, I just don't know the reason behind us having to do this, or any one of us. Is it gonna change that drastically, or is it gonna stay basically the same as what's already in there? Like, is that for Tara to answer? Possibly.
So really that is up to council how much you want it to change. I think there was 5 or 6 things that I had noted that have come up when we're trying to deal with things, simply a bit more detail in the task force section. We don't have any situations, but it doesn't really talk about, you know, how if there's issues at the task force, how council would address that, or how the chair of the task force would address that. So I think it just needs to be put in writing. Right now, it would just be kind of ad hoc. Needs to be, we don't have anything in there about the police services board because it's new. So how that role's appointed, probably just drafting something similar to how it was done, and also similar to the deputy mayor and the second member of county council. So just things like that have kind of come up. Delegation section, I'd like to add something about planning applications. It's really important that planning applications stay under the Planning Act, and those public meetings are held under the Planning Act using those rules and not as delegations of council. Something simple, we've just seen it come up. So those are the things that I'm looking at that we're kind of, but council may want to look at look at the whole policy. There's lots of different things that other municipalities do that council may be interested in doing. So again, it's really council driven. I just had those few suggestions.
Any other comments? Councilor Hoodle?
So this would be stuff like how we appoint a deputy mayor, or how long the term is for, and all different things like that. So I would agree with the mayor that it would probably be beneficial to have at least one counselor on that committee but that wouldn't be me. I'm too busy, but
I would like to do it, but I would like another counselor there as well. I don't see anybody waiting.
Well, I'd be willing to do it, but I have 0 suggestions.
Okay.
Except the one Tara's already mentioned, the issue of task force influence is an interesting one. It's very subjective. Like, I've always wondered what's the effect of a counselor bringing an issue to this table versus a task force recommending an issue to this table. I've always assumed task force has a little more influence. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. Maybe it should be defined very clearly.
Councilor Fowler?
Well, we have a governance committee there at the county level. And it's very interesting because they go over a lot of these documents and make changes if they need changes or updates. And I think it would be good for us to be able to do that occasionally, especially to this document.
Okay. Maybe I can propose an alternative, because this. Okay. If we let Tara do what she wants, or what she is suggesting that the administration do. And then we set aside a second motion or a second resolution or a second review in the next year, where we would do an in-depth review of this whole policy, or leave that for the first year of the next council, which I wouldn't suggest that to be at least the second year. Corey?
So we could bring something back. And of course, it's, if you guys, you know, you look through it and say, you know what? I didn't realize we do this, or, you know, and then you guys can give Tara all that input if you want. She can bring it back. You can give her all that input, and then we can bring it back. I mean, it's not something you have to do in one meeting by any means. It's going to be a proposal. Here's some changes we recommend. And then you like them or you don't, but also we'd like this change, you know, now that we've reviewed this, we think. So, I mean, we can do that too. Again, it's not this doesn't have to be a one meeting thing. This can be a proposal, you consider it, and then you tell us, give us some direction from there, if you'd like.
Any final comments? Counselor Herber?
Well, so in other words, it'll be a live document.
Yeah, we'll bring it back and then we'll make some changes, make some, of what we think are concerns or whatever, and you guys look at it and say, we like this, we don't, or we'd also like these changed. And again, we'll bring it back, we'll keep it, bringing it back until you have it in place right now. We'll continue with that until we bring back the suggested changes, and then we'll make the changes when you're ready.
Okay, any final comments? Okay, in favor of the resolution? Carried. Okay, proposal to, if I got that. So item E. To regulate and govern the operation of cemeteries.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved, the council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Proposed Bylaw to Regulate and Govern the Operations of Cemetery. The council approves the draft cemetery bylaw with the following amendments. And the council instructs the clerk to prepare the required public notice. And that if public comments are received, the clerk shall provide them to council. And if no public comments are received, the bylaw shall be provided to the Bereavement Authority of Ontario for consideration. The council approves in principle the proposed fees excluding care and maintenance as follows. A plot for a resident, 500, a cremation lot for a resident, 250, a lot for a non-resident, 600, cremation lot, non-resident, 300, repurchase plot administration fee, $100, transfer administration fee, $100, mark a plot or monument, $100. And that council instructs the clerk to schedule a public meeting for council to receive any public comments on the proposed fees and consider adopting an amended fees and charges bylaw on the cemetery schedule.
Comments? Counselor Herber?
Getting more expensive to die, isn't it?
I thought you were going to say, where's my tree? Any other comments? In favor? Oh, sorry.
I'm just reading the details here. Somebody could speculate on plots. Yes. This could be like buying up real estate. So Roy's gonna tell me a story, but so you could buy a plot for $100 and then 15 years later sell it for 10,000 when they run out. Or, and we want to allow this.
So, I mean, we don't have any choice but to really allow it. So, I mean, really the big decision is whether or not we're going to allow people to sell those lots privately, like with the paperwork coming through the township, or whether or not we're going to buy them back. And when we buy them back, we have to buy them back at the market value, and they can only sell them at market value. So if you wanted to sell a plot, you could only sell it at the price that's on the price list today. But we had 6 plots returned last year that were purchased for $50, and we had to pay them back at the cost that we would sell them for today at nearly $500.
So under a new agreement, the owners of those original 6 plots would sell them privately and get whatever they could. Why should that matter to us, I guess?
And actually, they can only sell it for the price that we would sell it for. So they can't ask for more than what you would buy it from the township.
Currently.
Correct.
How do we enforce that? We don't. Okay. All right.
I think the way it kind of gets enforced is, are they going to pay someone else more money than they can come to the township and buy one for?
As long as we have them.
As long as we have them.
Okay. Any final comments? In favor of the resolution? Resolution's carried. Okay, let's take a break till 10 to 11. Welcome back, everyone. We begin with item 11F, Preparedness Week, May the 5th to the 11th.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Community Emergency Management Coordinator's Administrative Report entitled Emergency Preparedness Week, May 5th through 11th, 2025. The council is joining with the Ontario Fire Marshal and the Emergency Management to remind and educate local residents about the importance of being personally prepared. And the council declares May 5th through the 11th, 2025 as Emergency Preparedness Week. And the council approves the mayor's declaration. And the council instructs the CMC to include a copy of the mayoral declaration on the township's website, social media, and in the Frontenac News. And the council instructs the CMC to publish the quiz and approves the purchase of one two-person 72-hour emergency survival kit with water as a draw prize. And the council instructs the CMC to post daily, Monday to Friday bulletins on the township's website and social media regarding safety tips for emergency preparedness. The 5 topics will include 1, extreme heat, 2, wildfires, severe storms and flooding, power outages, and pets during an emergency.
Any comments? In favor of the resolution? That resolution is carried. 2025 bunker gear purchase.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Director of Emergency Services Fire Chief's Administrative Report entitled 2025 Bunker Gear Purchase, and that council directs the treasurer to take the additional $15,000 required for the additional bunker gear in 2025 from the Fire Sustainability TCA Reserve Fund.
Any comments? Counselor Hermer.
Question for Adam. Adam, do you think with the climate that $15,000 will be sufficient?
Mr. Mayor, through you, to get us through 2025, yes, it will be. And then on my administrative report, further down, it indicates reviewing the budget for next year to make sure we capture every potential to get us through and continue on.
Mr. Hoodle.
So I'm just looking at the numbers here. So the $9,000 would be typically, you said in the report, typically would cover 3 bunker. But in 2025, we needed 7. So why didn't we have 21,000 in the budget? Like, I'm missing something here. Am I not reading it correct? Like, why didn't we plan for more? I understand the increase in cost, but if you're asking for 7 now, why wasn't that put in budget?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the answer is really, at that time when we were planning for 2026 budget, it wasn't clear on how many would be successful completing the program. There was a lot of unknowns, and I felt it better to come to council and request the money and kind of tell a good news story. As you know, we had this many people go through and do the program, and now this is what we need now that we're completed. So again, for 2026 and beyond, it's worth council to consider reviewing that budget item to make sure we capture.
So I personally feel better the other way. Like, I would rather you come with, we needed 7 and save only 4. So anyway, we should always try to budget as accurate as we can. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Adam. It's just, anyway.
Sorry, my comment on this is to both fire chiefs that are here. First of all, thank you for your service, gentlemen, but we want to make sure you always are funded adequately, okay? So we don't need any shortcuts, or don't make us, if we get upset with something, don't worry about it. We're just trying to make sure your departments are completely funded appropriately, okay? We don't want a surprise down the road. Well, then we don't have the money. Okay, any other comments on this? Councilor Fowler.
Yes, we have people come and go. Do the bunker gear, can somebody else use it to pass it along, like a hand-me-down?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, the answer is yes. If it's in service gear, that can be done. So the bunker gear under the NFPA standards currently has a 10-year shelf life. Once it hits that 10-year mark, it can no longer be used for anything live fire. And if we never had any situations where we had anyone around live fire, and that, would include training, response calls, all of that, it wouldn't be an issue. But because we don't know what we're always going to be up against, we need to keep as much in-service gear on bodies as we can.
Mr. Hoodle.
Just out of curiosity, like, I know for a hard hat, if you get bonked on the head, that hard hat really is supposed to be put on the shelf. For bunker gear, is it the same thing? If you go into a live fire, Is that gear then done or?
So the gear would be subject to inspection. If it's the SOG that we have or the OG we have in place is for each firefighter is responsible for their gear once issued. So if they go into a call, they disassemble, inspect and report any deficiencies or damage that might have occurred. And then that gear would be sent out for a certified inspection. And at that time, if it doesn't pass, then we would review and have to reissue.
Any other comments? Corey?
I just want to reiterate what the chief said, and this is a really good news story. I mean, a year ago, we were really worried about the training. And you know, would people be able, it's a ton of training that they have to go through now with all these new regulations. So the fact we have to get some more bunker gear is, you know, yes, there's a cost to it, but at the end of the day, it means that we're getting more and more firefighters certified, which we need. So, and this is a great story, and we just want to make sure you understand, read between the lines. It's not just a request for money, but this is a great thing for us.
Yeah, I'm not saying this isn't a good story. This is a great story. I'm just saying I'd rather see the money up front when we're budgeting, right? And that's all.
Any other comments? Seeing none in favor of the resolution? Resolution's carried. Okay, so we have item H, Emergency First Responder Day, International Firefighters Day.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Fowler. Be resolved that council receives for information the Director of Emergency Services Fire Chief's Administrative Report entitled Emergency First Responder Day, May 1st, 2025, and International Firefighters Day, May 4th, 2025.
Comments? Seeing none in favor of the resolution? Resolution's carried. Item I, 2025 land use permit with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry for the North Frontenac Parklands.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Manager Community Development's Administrative Report entitled 2025 Land Use Permit with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry for the North Frontenac Parklands, and that council approves the 2025 land use permit for operation of the North Frontenac Parkland.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Treasurer, Council Committee 2024 remuneration and expenses.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Treasurer's Administrative Report entitled 2024 Council Committee Remuneration and Expenses.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Public Works Manager, contract extension, waste site, environmental monitoring and reporting.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Public Works Manager's Administrative Report entitled Contract Extension, Waste Site Environmental Monitoring and Reporting. The council approves extending the existing agreement with Cambium Incorporated for a further 3 years to April 30th, 2028, with an option for the township to extend the agreement by an additional 2 years. That based on Cambium's specialized experience, knowledge, expertise, and ongoing projects, it is more efficient to extend the existing agreement than to issue a request for proposal and potentially secure services from another vendor. And that further efficiencies result from 2 other Frontenac townships also extending the existing agreements with Cambium. And the council authorizes the chief administrative officer in consultation with the public works manager to approve the extended agreement on behalf of the township, and that the terms and conditions governing the environmental monitoring and reporting agreement be subject to the details outlined in the proposal provided by Cambium dated September 6, 2024.
Any comments? Councillor Hoodle.
Darren, just who else is out there? Like we use Cambium at York Region. Who else is out there?
Previously, council had used AME. I don't know, firms are merging so much, I don't know current names, but there are other providers, but
Cambium's the big player out there.
they are,
Yeah.
yeah. In their submission, they manage and report on about 80 waste sites across the province, and we've been really happy with their service. You can tell from this morning, their monitoring and reporting and their technical advice. They have a number of different individuals, and depending on what the specialty is, we draw on that. And it is, there's some efficiencies with South and Central using them as well. Especially in the early days of this assignment where they were doing joint studies. And now we're kind of off each, providing certain services directly to each township, but there's still some benefit to them servicing all three townships.
Any other comments? In favor of the resolution? Carried. Item 12A, Committee of Adjustment and Planning Advisory Committee.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the minutes of a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment Planning Advisory Committee held November 25th, 2024.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Item 12B, Caledon Berry Joint Fire Committee.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the minutes of the meeting of the Caledon Berry Joint Fire Committee held December 20th, 2024.
Comments? Counselor Fowler?
I noticed I'm looking at the people that attended and I filled in for Council Hoodle. And he's not registered in there as absent with regret. Is that necessary? If I'm filling in for him?
I did make that amendment at the fire committee, but I did it on paper. So it didn't get picked up in the electronic copy. So I'll update the electronic copy as well, but that was captured at the committee.
Any other comments? In favor? Carried. Economic Development Task Force.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the minutes of a meeting of the Economic Development Task Force held February 18th, 2025.
Comments? And one, I'm pleased to see that the Economic Development Task Force is beginning to understand the potential importance of the KMP Trail. And for anyone that's on that task force, don't forget, there could be money at the county for some of this stuff. Like a trailhead at Trevor Lake is out in line for $100,000 on a $300,000 purchase. It's not bad. Okay, in favor? Carried. Environmental Task Force.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the minutes of the meeting of the Environmental Task Force held February 25th, 2025, and the council approves the task force creating and distributing a quarterly newsletter focusing on environmental issues based on the season.
Comments? Councilor Hoodle?
I should have said something before. I think this poster looks great. But where we have the township of North Frontenac, do we need the address and the telephone number on there? It just looks a little cluttered.
We can fix that. We can take that off if you want. Sure.
Okay. Any other comments? In favor? Carried. Anyone wish to give notice of motion? Seeing none, we have no motions, which notice has been given previously. Item 15, council portfolio, verbal reports. Let me catch up to you here. Okay. So at the county level, not much has happened. Next meeting is not till March 19th, 2025. The Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus meets in Kingston on the afternoon of the 27th and the morning of the 28th. There is a YouTube website. I sent to Corey, and I'm going to ask Corey to distribute it to all of you. And it's done by it's done by Steve Pagan. He's the moderator, and there was three others. One was the mayor of the CAO of Northumberland County, the mayor of London, and then there was a consultant. The consultant was in Barry's Bay. And they were talking about tariffs and the implications and so on. And like Northumberland County's been kind of doing a deep dive into how much they buy from the US and whatever, and they figure it's about 1% of their total purchases. But the consultant pointed out, it's not easy. For instance, an ambulance can have parts made in China come into Canada. There's some assembly here. It's sent to the United States where the majority of work is done and it's brought back and it won't meet the Canadian requirements. So that ambulance is no longer suitable, even though it's a Canadian company doing it. So it's very, very, very complicated, and they suggested it, or they were suggesting it's very much a go slow process. Nobody should be jumping to conclusions, especially with everything just being in a state of flux. And with the individuals involved, we had 25% tariff on electricity, and the day later it's off. You know, who knows what's going to happen? So anyway, that's just FYI, but I'll go ask Corey about this comment to send it out to you. And there's a governance meeting next week or something, or the week after. I forget what date it is. That's it. I have no contact with the North Frontenac Lake Association Alliance. We did receive a letter from Andrew Wayward from Palmerston Lake Association on Lafoya Lake or Lafoya Lane. Wayne, you have anything? Okay. Councillor Regent's not with us anymore because she had to leave. Councillor Hoodle.
We had a MVCA board meeting on Monday. One of the presentations was on the flooding possibilities of the lake levels right now. So everything as of right now is normal. They're starting to drain Crotch Lake and anticipating higher than level flooding this spring because of the late snowfall that we received. But just Jennifer wanted to remind us that, or just tell us that, you know, with all the snowfall, that only accounts for 20% of the runoff. Most of it comes from rain. So we don't know, obviously, what the weather's going to be like. But everything right now is normal. Kashawakimak Dam, they are now putting out an RFP because they're at that stage now they have the detailed plan ready. So the RFP is, I think, sent out this week or next week. They will award that next month, hopefully. The board updated their financial strategy, which I thought was quite interesting. They're using an investment firm to do their investing now with, I'm not sure if we don't, do we? Or do we? No. And anyway, so that was interesting. We approved that. It's the first time they've used a third party to do their investments. What else? Oh, and then there was some talk about Palmerston Lake Beach being transferred over to North Frontenac, and I'm sure there's going to be a report coming next, so I won't say anything about that. And there was some money put into reserve, $100,000, and that's all from MVCA. On the weekend, I was at the Quinte Sportsman Show representing North Frontenac, and I can tell you that the amount of comments I got on our camping facilities and it was just amazing. All people wanted to talk about was the camping and the astronomy club. So, but it was really, really good. And a lot of people have or already will be reserving spots for this summer. So that's a really good news story.
That's really good news.
And then I spoke to someone from the Ontario Fishing and Angling and Hunting Association, who's a biologist who's been working on the Eurasian milfoil. And a very interesting conversation with that gentleman. There's another invasive species coming that is 100 times worse than this. So it's now starting to show up in Lake Erie, and more, you know, they're monitoring that very closely.
Just good news, bad news. Which one do you want first, right? You said an RFP, is that for the actual reconstruction of the dam? Okay. Sure.
Yeah, I've been asked, are they gonna replace the dam where it is now, or are they gonna go below it or above it? Just
I believe it's right where it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I said on one of the actual planning committees and tried to suggest that they use the old dam as the coffer dam and build it downstream. But because they had to go downstream far enough that the costs were horrendous. Were all significantly more. So they elected to put it right on top. So it'll be next winter, I guess, then. Okay. Well, by the sound of it,
Yeah, their RFP is going out who knows when they're gonna start, like, you know, things that get delayed all the time, right? But
Right.
they don't have an actual date, but I think it was planned for next winter.
The idea is to start it when the water is lowest, so after the drawdown, they start the next day. Okay. Okay, so we have Counselor Hermer.
Nothing. I don't have any more bad news, so.
Counselor Fowler.
We had an EOTA meeting yesterday. During that meeting, the KMP Trail Agreement with the EOTA was passed, and also the North Frontenac Parklands Agreement was passed by the EOTA board. They have this, I mentioned it before, this Rockin' the Trails. It's happening in Tweed. It'll be on June 21st. It's a very popular ATV ride. They have 1,000 ATV permits or tickets they're gonna give out, but they have already sold over 800. So if you're interested in this, you can go there. And also there's 2,000 tickets that are available for the concert that they're having there. And this Jason McCullough is gonna be performing there. It'll be something interesting. With the SALT committee, Tuesday, March 18th, there's a presentation at Clare Mill Hall. And that's all that.
Okay, Counselor Deputy Mayor Ingles.
The only thing I have from the Lake Associations is Bruce Moore, president of the Alliance, wants me to put a meeting together to talk about short-term rentals on the lakes. That comes out of an environmental task force subgroup. But we'll be reviving an old question about short-term rentals. Should we do anything, et cetera?
Thank you, gentlemen. That brings us to item 16, introduction and reading of bylaws.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws that have been circulated to all members of council. 2025-12 to adopt procedural policy for committee of adjustment. 13 to close and sell shore road allowance. 25-14 to regulate the location, installation, and operation of outdoor fuel combustion appliances. And that these bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Comments? In favor? Carried. We have anybody online for public forum? No. We don't have a closed session. So confirmatory bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that bylaw 2025-15 being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council for its regular meeting held March 14th, 2025 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Comments? In favor? Carried. So adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Herber, seconded by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council adjourns the meeting at 11:21 a.m. until April 4th, 2025, or at the call of the chair.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.